everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Mike O'Keefe. I'm the Deputy Director of the City and County's Department of Environmental Services. So just a real brief background of what our department does. We manage all of the city's wastewater and solid waste infrastructure. On the wastewater side, that's 2,100 miles of gravity sewer system, 72 wastewater pump stations, 9 wastewater treatment plants. On the solid waste side, which is kind of primarily what we're here to talk about today, we manage the city's waste-to-energy facility, H-Power, the Waimanalo Gulch landfill, 7 drop-off refuse and recycling convenience centers, and 3 transfer stations, and we manage all of the curbside collection. So the yellow trucks that you see going through your neighborhoods, picking up the gray, green, and blue cart, that's our department. So that's us in a brief overview. Yes, well, one of the things I'll mention before I kind of dive into some of the source reduction and reuse initiatives that our department has is just highlight the importance of those initiatives for the solid waste program for the city and the island as a whole. And so with that, I'll just click onto this slide. And for those of you who've been paying attention to the news, recently as it relates to the landfill, we have a big landfill problem right now on Oʻahu. We have to close the Waimanalo Gulch landfill by 2028, which is very, very soon, and open a new one. We named a site for a new landfill in central Oʻahu, but there's opposition to that site, understandably. But what I want to point out here is this map that's kind of been a focal point of our whole discussion on siting a landfill. This map represents all of the restrictions, state, federal, and other restrictions that we have on siting a landfill on this island. And so I'm not going to go into every one of them, but you can see that the only available areas on the island to site a landfill are the areas in white. Those aren't layered with a restriction, but I should also note the areas in white are over an aquifer, over the island's aquifers. So they're technically legally available, but perhaps maybe not a great place to site a landfill. We named the site that we did because it was the only legally available site. But I'm not here to talk about the landfill today. I'm here to talk about source reduction and reuse. But I bring this up because it makes very little to no sense to continue to not prioritize these types of initiatives, because if we don't, we're going to be stuck siting landfills into the future. And this whole project is motivation enough that we should not want to be doing that. It's difficult to do it now. It's going to be even more difficult to do this in the future. So one of the things I'll pivot to now is what the city is doing to reduce waste. We have, as a city and as a county of the state of Hawaii, all counties have to generate into what's called integrated solid waste management plans every 10 years. An integrated solid waste management plan is basically our guiding document for how we manage solid waste for the following 10 years. And so we did this in 2019, and one of the most important things that came out of this process, and it was the first time this topic has ever come out of the integrated solid waste management process, was our stakeholders' insistence that the city focus on source reducing our waste. To that end, our advisory committee recommended that the city establish a source reduction working group. And you can see here, we did that at the end of the planning process, and then over the course of 2023 and 2024, this source reduction working group of 10 members, of which I was a member, of which Quinn was a member, and 8 other people in our industry were members of this group, got together and talked about what can the city do to better affect source reduction and waste reduction and reuse, so as to pull back and limit the problems that we're having with waste on this island, in particular having to site a new landfill. So I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but I'll show this to you. These are the recommended actions that the source reduction working group came up for the city following this 2-year process of meeting, and we had speakers, we had focus groups and discussion groups and so on. These are the priorities that we came up with, and you know, it's not a coincidence that at the top of the list here is what Quinn had just talked about, which is better management of C&D, construction and demolition waste. Some of the, in a sense, Quinn teed up my discussion perfectly because he talked about how voluminous, how much of C&D waste there is. He showed national figures, but those figures are very similar to what we have here in Hawaii. It's the majority of the waste we generate here, and it's a big problem. It creates a big landfill problem. So one of the actions that the group recommended we focus on was better management of C&D waste, and we're actively working on that now. I'll also just plug the group really wanted us to focus on PV management of PV waste and packaging waste. PV waste because a lot of the PV systems that were installed several years ago are reaching the end of their useful life right now, and there's a question as to how best to manage that waste once they become no longer usable. I'll just rattle through a couple of other city programs here because I think we're running a little bit short on time. We have, in addition to the source reduction working group product that we came up with, the city does have some existing source reduction and reuse programs that are on the book. And I'm going to list a couple of the popular ones right now. The disposable foodware ordinance, which regulates single-use containers, single-use foodware, single-use serviceware, and kind of targets that single-use plastic in particular. So you can see the details of the restrictions in that ordinance. And I should note that we're actually going to be proposing, very soon, we're going to be proposing amendments to this ordinance to actually further strengthen the disposal foodware ordinance to tighten it up and even further limit some of the allowable plastic that is still permissible under the ordinance. If it's considered reusable, you can still distribute plastic, but we're gonna try to get rid of that and truly move to a situation where companies, if they give single-use stuff away, it's got to be compostable or truly reusable and not made from plastic. We also have the plastic bag ban. We were the first state back in 2015 or so to have an effective statewide plastic bag ban. Each county had passed ordinances regulating the use of single-use plastic bags, and so we actively enforce this ban all year. And you can see what the ban prohibits and what's allowable under the ban. Similarly, on the books, we also have several mandatory recycling programs for businesses. And I'm always very careful to talk about, to differentiate between recycling and reuse and source reduction, because they are two different things. Source reduction is eliminating waste at the source. Reuse is obviously reusing waste at the source to keep it out of the disposal stream. And recycling is how to effectively deal with waste once it's kind of no longer reusable and waste that wasn't reduced at the source. But I bring up these recycling programs because they are effective at promoting source reduction. And I put up the city's mandatory food waste recycling program here as an example. So you can see, just very quickly, this, so restaurants that occupy 5,000 square feet or more and serve 400 or more meals per day are essentially required to recycle their food waste. This is actually, it's a great program because A, it gets the food waste out of the trash stream, but B, recycling food waste is very, very expensive. It's very wet, it's very heavy, and requires special handling. So the fact that these companies, these businesses have to have to comply with this ordinance, which is essentially a law, is really it creates a strong incentive for them to better manage their food waste on site. And that's either through reducing food waste or donating it to reuse organizations such as Aloha Harvest, for example. So I just mentioned that as a good example. We have mandatory food waste recycling ordinance. We have mandatory glass recycling ordinance. Again, glass similar to food waste, heavy. Recycling companies don't like it. Let's get rid of glass. And then, okay, that might have been it. But yeah, I also I would be remiss if I didn't plug another reuse program that we have on the books that we're actually starting with Re-use Hawaiʻi. Actually, we're going to have a pilot program where we install, partnering with Re-use Hawaiʻi, where we install a trailer at our Kapa'a transfer station on Kapa'a Quarry Road in Kailua. And very much like reuse exists to take back material that still has some useful life left in it. When people come into our transfer station looking to unload trash into the pit with all the other trash, we see it all the time. There's a ton of good stuff left in the trash that they're throwing away. So what we're doing in partnership with Re-use Hawaiʻi is we're going to have this trailer there, have this drop-off station there, and tell people when they come into the station, like, hey, if you have anything that doesn't need to be thrown away, that has some useful life left to it, and that could be used by someone else, instead of dumping it in the pit with the rest of the trash that goes to H-Power, that eventually from which goes to the landfill, drop it off at the trailer, and we'll keep it out of the waste stream. So we're really excited about that program. I think it's tentatively scheduled to start May-ish time this year, so I'm looking forward to having that up and running. So that's all I really wanted to say today. I really appreciate your time.